Imagine a film so groundbreaking that it not only redefined the horror genre, but also ignited one of cinema's earliest and most intense creative battles. The Cabinet of Dr. Calagari is more than just a movie. It's a haunting reflection of post-war trauma, a bold critique of authority, and a cinematic revolution that forever changed how films were made. But behind its twisted sets and eerie atmosphere lies a fascinating and contentious story of creative conflict and controversial decisions that shaped the film into the masterpiece we know today. This lecture will guide you through its historical context and the creative journey that led to its making, and then we'll dive into two major theoretical approaches to understanding the film: psychoanalytic theory and formalist theory. Together, we'll analyze specific scenes, symbols, and narrative structures to uncover the profound meanings woven into this cinematic masterpiece. The journey of the Cabinet of Dr. Calagari begins with its writers, Hans Janowitz and Karl Mayr, who were deeply influenced by the chaotic aftermath of World War I and the political instability of the Weimar Republic. Both men shared a profound disillusionment with authority figures, a theme that would become central to the film's narrative. Hans Janowitz, a veteran of World War I, was haunted by his experiences on the battlefield. He returned from the war with a deep-seated distrust of military and governmental authority, a sentiment that would shape his creative work. Karl Mayr, a pacifist who avoided military service by feigning psychological instability during his conscription, also harbored a strong skepticism towards those in power. This shared disillusionment with authority drove the pair to collaborate on a screenplay that would express their anxieties and critique the manipulation of power. The inspiration for Dr. Calagari came from a series of personal experiences and observations. One of the most significant influences was an eerie encounter Janowitz had at a carnival in Hamburg in 1913. He followed a mysterious woman through the darkened fairgrounds and later heard a scream in the night. The next day, he discovered that a woman had been found murdered in the same area. This unsettling experience left a lasting impression on Janowitz and would later inspire the nightmarish atmosphere of Dr. Calagari. When Janowitz and Mayr met, they quickly bonded over their shared experiences and desire to create something that reflected the psychological trauma and societal instability of their time. They envisioned a film that would explore themes of madness, control, and the dangers of unchecked authority. The character of Dr. Calagari, the film's antagonist, was conceived as a symbol of the tyrannical figures who had led Germany into the devastation of war. Cesare, the somnambulist controlled by Calagari, represented the ordinary people who were manipulated and exploited by those in power. Janowitz and Mayr's original script was a clear condemnation of authoritarianism. They crafted a narrative that depicted Dr. Calagari as a villain who is eventually exposed and brought to justice, reflecting their desire to criticize the manipulation and abuse of power. The film was intended to be a stark warning about the dangers of allowing such figures to go unchecked. However, when the script was handed over to Robert Wiener, the director chosen to helm the project, and the producers at Dekla Bioscope, a significant change was made that would alter the film's message and spark controversy. In this new version of the film, the story is presented as a flashback told by Francis, who is revealed in the final scenes to be a patient in a mental asylum. This twist ending, which suggests that the entire narrative may have been the product of Francis's delusional mind, introduced a level of ambiguity that was not present in the original script. Instead of a straightforward condemnation of authority, the film now left audiences questioning the nature of reality and the reliability of perception. The decision to add this twist ending was highly controversial. Janowitz and Mayr were reportedly unhappy with the change, feeling that it undermined the anti-authoritarian message they had intended to convey. They believed that the addition of the framing device diluted the film's critique of power and authority, transforming it into a more conventional story about madness rather than a bold political statement. Robert Wiener, on the other hand, saw the twist ending as an opportunity to elevate the film's psychological depth and artistic complexity. By making the story's reality uncertain, Vienna introduced a level of narrative sophistication that aligned with the Expressionist movement's focus on subjectivity and the exploration of the inner workings of the mind. The distorted sets and surreal visuals, which became hallmarks of Dr. Calagari, were now framed as reflections of Francis's disturbed psyche, rather than direct representations of the world within the story. This creative tension between the writers and the director highlights a broader debate about the role of art in society. Should art serve as a vehicle for clear political messages, as Janowitz and Meyer intended, or should it embrace ambiguity and explore the complexities of human psychology, as Vienna's version of the film does? The Cabinet of Dr. Calagari stands at the crossroads of these two approaches, making it a unique and enduring work of cinema. Despite the controversy, the final version of Dr. Calagari was a critical and commercial success. The film's innovative use of distorted set designs, with their jagged lines and unsettling angles, created a visual representation of the psychological turmoil at the heart of the story. These expressionist techniques were groundbreaking at the time and have since become iconic elements of the film. The film's success also marked a turning point for German cinema, solidifying the country's reputation as a leader in avant-garde filmmaking during the 1920s. Dr. Calagari influenced countless films that followed, particularly in the horror genre, and its impact can still be seen in contemporary cinema. Let's delve into the film's deeper meanings through the lenses of psychoanalytic theory, developed by Sigmund Freud. This theory focuses on the influence of the unconscious mind on human behavior. In film analysis, psychoanalytic theory explores how cinematic elements reflect the character's repressed desires, fears, and internal conflicts. The Cabinet of Dr. Calagari is particularly ripe for this kind of analysis due to its themes of madness, authority, and the fractured self. One of the most striking aspects of Dr. Calagari is its use of the unreliable narrator. The story is told through the eyes of Francis, who recounts the bizarre events surrounding Dr. Calagari and the somnambulist Cesare. However, the twist ending reveals that Francis is an inmate in an asylum, casting doubt on everything we've seen, conscious and unconscious parts, often in conflict with one another. Francis's story can be seen as an attempt to reconcile his perception of reality with his repressed fears and trauma. His projection of guilt and paranoia onto Dr. Calagari reflects his inner struggle, a classic example of the Freudian defense mechanism known as projection. Consider the final scene, where Francis' delusion is exposed. We see the world of the asylum, which resembles the twisted, distorted reality we've been immersed in throughout the film. This scene symbolizes the collapse of the boundary between reality and fantasy, a hallmark of Freudian analysis. The stark contrast between what Francis believes and what is revealed suggests the dominance of his unconscious mind, which distorts his perception of reality to cope with his psychological pain. Now, let's turn to the character of Dr. Calagari, who can be interpreted through the lens of psychoanalytic theory as a symbol of authoritarian control. Dr. Calagari's manipulation of Cesare, the somnambulist, reflects how the superego exerts control over the unconscious mind. Cesare, who acts as a tool for Calagari, is a manifestation of repressed desires unleashed in a way that bypasses the conscious mind. Take, for example, the scene where Cesare is commanded by Dr. Calagari to murder. The stark lighting and shadow play in this scene, with Cesare emerging from the darkness, emphasizes his role as an agent of the unconscious. His stiff, almost robotic movements signify the absence of free will, reinforcing the idea that he is a puppet controlled by the superego's authoritarian dictates. The murder itself becomes a symbolic act of the unconscious mind, acting out repressed violence, a concept deeply rooted in Freudian theory. Now let's shift our focus to formalist theory. Formalism emphasizes the importance of form, structure, and stylistic elements in a film, rather than just the narrative content. The Cabinet of Dr. Calagari is a perfect example of formalist cinema, where the visual and auditory elements are as crucial to the film's meaning as the story itself. The visual style of Dr. Calagari is perhaps its most immediately striking feature. The film's set design is dominated by jagged, angular buildings, twisted trees, and impossible architecture, all painted with harsh contrasts. These distorted sets do more than create an eerie atmosphere. They are visual representations of the characters' psychological states. In formalist terms, these elements are not just decorative. They are integral to how the film communicates its themes. Consider the opening sequence where we are introduced to the town and asylum. The buildings lean at impossible angles, windows are irregularly shaped, and the streets wind in unnatural directions. This visual distortion immediately sets the tone for the film, signaling to the audience that what they are about to witness is not a depiction of reality, but rather a psychological landscape. The use of painted shadows directly on the sets, rather than relying on natural lighting, creates an artificial, dreamlike environment that is central to the film's formalistic approach. Lighting and cinematography in Dr. Calagari are used not just to illuminate scenes, but to enhance the emotional and psychological impact of the film. Let's examine the scene where Cesare is first awakened by Dr. Calagari. The heavy use of shadow in this scene, with light focused only on Cesare's face, creates a stark contrast that isolates him from his surroundings. This visual technique emphasizes Cesare's role as a creature of the night, a being of darkness controlled by Calagari. The shadows seem to envelop him, symbolizing the overpowering influence of the unconscious mind. This scene is a prime example of how formalist techniques use light and shadow to convey deeper meanings, making the viewer feel the unease and tension that defines the film. Symbolism is another key element of formalism, and Dr. Calagari is rich with symbolic imagery. Every element in the film, from the sets to the characters' costumes, is designed to convey deeper meanings and enhance the film's thematic content. For instance, Cesare's black skin-tight outfit and pale face can be seen as a symbol of death and the unconscious. In the scene where Cesare abducts Jane, his movements are slow and deliberate, almost mechanical, reinforcing his role as a puppet of Dr. Calagari. Jane, in her white dress, symbolizes innocence and purity, making her abduction a symbolic act of corruption by the forces of darkness. The twisted trees and jagged landscape of the set further emphasize the unnatural and oppressive nature of Cesare's pursuit. This scene illustrates how formalist elements, costuming, set design, and movement work together to create a rich tapestry of symbolic meaning that enhances the film's exploration of control, innocence, and corruption. Finally, let's discuss the narrative structure of Dr. Calagari, which is itself a formalist technique. The film's story is framed as a flashback, told by Francis, with the twist ending revealing that Francis is actually an inmate in an asylum. This non-linear structure creates a sense of disorientation and challenges the audience's perception of reality. The final revelation that Francis is insane recontextualizes the entire narrative, turning what seemed like a straightforward horror story into a complex psychological exploration. This narrative twist is a formalist technique that forces the audience to question everything they have seen. It aligns with the distorted sets and chiaroscuro lighting to create a cohesive sense of unease and ambiguity. The structure itself becomes a symbol of the film's central theme: the fragility of reality and the power of the mind to distort it. In the cabinet of Dr. Calagari, psychoanalytic and formalist theories converge to create a film that is as much about the mind as it is about the visuals. The distorted sets, chiaroscuro lighting, and symbolic imagery are not just aesthetic choices, they are expressions of the character's inner psychological states, particularly Francis's fragmented psyche. The film's form, the way it looks and feels, serves to externalize the internal conflicts of the characters. This interplay between form and content is what makes Dr. Calagari a masterpiece of both psychoanalytic and formalist cinema. Signs and symbols are crucial to both psychoanalytic and formalist interpretations of Dr. Calagari. For instance, eyes and spirals are recurring motifs that carry significant symbolic weight. In psychoanalytic terms, eyes often represent perception, insight, and control, while spirals can symbolize a descent into madness or the cyclical nature of repression. One example of this is the spiral staircase in Dr. Calagari's office, which can be seen as a symbol of the downward spiral into madness. As characters ascend or descend this staircase, it represents their psychological journey, often leading deeper into the labyrinth of the mind. This visual motif ties into both the psychoanalytic theme of mental disintegration and the formalist approach of using set design to reinforce thematic content. The combination of psychoanalytic themes and formalist techniques in the cabinet of Dr. Calagari creates a viewing experience that is both intellectually stimulating and emotionally unsettling. The film engages the audience on multiple levels, visually, psychologically, and thematically, inviting them to explore the depths of the human mind and the complexities of reality. By intertwining these theories, the film transcends simple storytelling, using every cinematic tool available to delve into the darkest corners of human experience. It's a powerful reminder of how cinema can be used not just to tell stories, but to explore the very nature of perception, identity, and authority. As we conclude this lecture, I encourage you to reflect on how Dr. Calagari uses these techniques to challenge your perceptions and invite you into a world where reality is as fluid and distorted as the sets themselves.